This was a very close-knit school, and they were going to do whatever they had to protect their own.
Tonight, a warning from a mid-Missouri mother after her tragic loss. Hallsville parents are concerned about school policies after 13-year-old Riley Wagner's suicide last month. Riley was in middle school at Hallsville when she took her own life. Good evening, I'm Brittany Pieper.
And I'm Jim Reek. Thanks for joining us. Now, many are questioning the type of environment the school provides for its students. Riley's family wanted to share her memory and her experience at the school in hopes of saving even one family from the very same grief. KOMU8's Target 8 Chief Investigator Jamie Gray is here in the studio to tell us how Missouri law comes into play.
We do want to warn you in advance, we will be discussing the very serious issue of teen suicide in this story for the next few minutes. Riley was the third student we know of to take her life in mid-Missouri in less than 6 months. Family and friends close to all three students say bullying was a main factor in their deaths. So we decided to look at bullying policies in Missouri and how they're monitored. It turns out they're required by law, but no one is required to check if they're working. KOMU8's Lauren Barnes is live in Hallsville to explain why oversight matters.
Well, it's a story of mixed messages. You see, the district tells me it does whatever it can to protect its students. But since Riley passed away, I've received at least a dozen tips from parents in the district with a different message about the poor and, in some cases, dangerous environment right here within these walls. I've read the emails between Riley's parents and school administrators and the school's correspondence with those other parents who reached out to me. But this, well, this is Riley's story.
Now I've heard there was a secret chord that David played and it pleased the Lord, but you don't really care for music, do you?
It says we cut and kill flowers because we think they're pretty. We cut and kill ourselves because we think we're not.
A look into Riley's deepest thoughts just days before she died. And a message from the school district just days after, when her mother says she got a visit from an administrator.
If you move to Hallsville and you haven't been there, from the time you were young, you will never be fully accepted. And that came from the middle school principal.
A spokesperson for the district told me this conversation never happened, but it's a message Renee says Riley heard loud and clear.
I know that there were girls telling her to go kill herself just about every day.
Her beauty and the moonlight.
A message Renee was trying to do something about. In late March, she asked KOMU8 to investigate the district. I started talking to her shortly after. But on April 5th, Renee sent, and I opened, a message that changed everything. My daughter passed away yesterday from suicide. She was 13.
12, getting ready to turn 13. This is her school picture this year. It's not how can we get students to just work on accepting others. It's, you won't be accepted. You're not from here, period.
A message that at least a dozen other parents have reached out to tell me they've heard too.
My daughter went through so many different phases of panic attacks, curled up in a ball every night, screaming. Our neighbors heard her. She just absolutely did not want to go to school.
So she decided enough was enough.
The bullies were doing it day in and day out, and so finally I had to give up a place that I absolutely loved and was almost paid off.
Cynthia says the price of a new mortgage was well worth her daughter's life, a choice no parent should ever have to make.
It's a very peaceful one. We always talk positive.
But one Renee would have easily made for Riley.
And we were working on getting Ryan and Riley into Columbia Public Schools.
The school has a bullying policy because it's mandated by Missouri law. It seems like schools measure everything: test scores, dropout rates, attendance quotas. And while the Missouri Department of Elementary and Secondary Education checks every year to make sure the policies exist, no one looks to see if they're being followed or measures to see if they're effective.
And she said, "Mom, I swear those girls tripped me, but the principal and nobody wants to do anything about it."
A $36,000 surgery to repair Riley's torn meniscus, a surgery she was still recovering from when she died. She says it was a teacher's daughter who tripped Riley. And when she went to the principal for help,
he said, "Well, I have to talk to my superintendent about that." I called the superintendent and emailed the superintendent, who acted like he wanted to work with me on it. And he said, "We don't have that video anymore. We don't keep them for very long."
the district spokesperson told me the school sat down with Riley to review the footage, but the moment when she was tripped was never found on camera.
Even when we had a teachers meeting, the woman did not deny throwing the book at my daughter.
So now Renee and her husband Keith are sending their own message to the school and the public that as a society, we have to do better.
And she was in therapy, but no amount of coping skills a child can learn can take away the pain that they hear from their peers.
And it needs to start with schools, a guaranteed safe space for students, a space that, for Riley, was anything but safe.
It says, high-top sneakers. Walking through the halls, fingers point and taunt. Not worthy, not there. Every voice, every snicker. Giving up is all I can give anyone. And she wrote this just a couple days before she passed.
The district refused to go on camera for an interview. Instead, it sent me a link to its bullying policy online, saying it was, quote, revised in October 2016 to reflect the most recent legal requirements regarding bullying in public schools, making sure I knew it was compliant with Missouri law. But what the district wouldn't, and perhaps it couldn't answer, is what happens when the law simply isn't enough. Reporting live in Hallsville, Lauren Barnes, KOMU 8 News.
This is an issue we've been covering in depth this year. To view our past coverage, you can go to KOMU.com, and under the Target 8 tab, you can find Cause of Death Bullying, a fully interactive site on this issue. If you or someone you know needs help, call the Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255.
Something should have been done about the bullying before a child lost his life.
Today, a special Target 8 investigation, cause of death bullying. Good afternoon, I'm Tyler Emery. Residents are speaking out after a coroner's inquest found bullying as the cause of death for a Missouri teen suicide. His cause of death is being changed from suicide to homicide, and his former boss is charged with involuntary manslaughter. KOMU 8's Shanna Grove is here with the latest Target 8 investigation.
Last month, I covered the inquest where jurors found bullying led to Kenny Suttner taking his own life. They said it happened at work and at school, saying the district followed policies and procedures but was negligent in preventing bullying. Now the town is divided. One man told me a group of people boycotted a local business because one of the employees testified at the inquest. Another man said testifying likely played a role in someone losing their job. To the people who knew Kenny, there is no dispute.
It's just the kind of kid you just fall in love with.
He was one of the kids where he'd give a shirt off the back for you.
You could tell he'd go out of his way to do anything for a friend.
But Kenny was facing struggles many kids across the country endure.
He'd share me that he'd be called names. He'd tell me they'd tease him about his ears and things. He had a lisp, but they would tease him.
I remember him saying about a couple of the teachers, how they were down-talking him, and they would tell him he was worthless and he was ugly and fat and stuff like that.
He was this type of kid that he just didn't want to bother nobody and be, he just held it all in. They tore him down to the point that he didn't think he was worth being here anymore.
As a result of the inquest, a great divide lies between some residents in the city.
The division I see a lot after the inquest. I got the cold shoulder because I was on the stand with Kenny.
I feel like just because an inquest was conducted, the town should not be divided. I think that, you know, some people were mad because it happened. Some people were glad because it happened.
As I began working on this story, one parent wrote to me, "People are scared of retaliation," and says, "I don't want my kids to become targets, but please, please keep trying to expose the truth. I beg you, there is a problem. It's real." But it doesn't stop there. The division also lies between some families and the school.
Why would a 17-year-old boy want to take his own life if something was done about it?
Our school doesn't do anything about our bullying. Like, they say they do, but they don't really.
You can preach a bully policy all you want. You can post papers. You can wallpaper the school in a bully policy. You have to enforce it. And I don't feel that it's being enforced.
I feel like Kenny would still be here with us today if something was done.
I hope to see that it brings light to a lot of people and that they realize that it's an issue. I mean, not only in Glasgow, but everywhere.
In Missouri, there's a hotline for people to report school violence, and I requested its telephone and online report data since 2014. In Missouri, there were 778 cases of bullying and harassment reported, and in Glasgow, there was only one reported case. A release from the Glasgow School District states, "It is seemingly not enough for the district to adopt policies and procedures to prevent bullying, not enough to train staff and students on bullying prevention. The district must prevent every instance of one student bullying another. With due respect to the inquest jury, no school district can satisfy the standard."
How would Glasgow be responsible for a student committing suicide? That's ludicrous. I just got done saying we do all the policies, we do all the training. Even the jury found that the district followed all its policies and all its procedures.
A Glasgow parent sent us an email from the school stating students and school personnel have met recently to discuss bullying. Tonight, we'll be looking more into liability and this idea of being held responsible for another person's death. It's a story you'll want to watch to learn more about the laws on bullying and harassment at schools and work. In addition, if you want to learn more, now we've put together an interactive story for you on our website. You can click on the logo image in the story to find extra videos, like from the school's attorney, and other photos and documents from the story. If you or someone you know needs help, call the Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-TALK. In the studio, Shanna Grove, KOMU 8 News.
As a result of the coroner's inquest, when the coroner's jury said that Kenny died by felony, then I will mark that death certificate homicide.
Tonight, a special Target 8 investigation, cause of death, bullying. Schools and employers might want to review the effectiveness of their bullying policies after a coroner's inquest raised the question, who's responsible for suicides? Good evening, I'm Brittany Pieper.
And I'm Jim Rake. Thanks for joining us. Bullying at work and school caused the death of a mid-Missouri teen, with the coroner changing the death certificate from suicide to homicide. Target 8's chief investigator, Jamie Gray, is here with the team's latest investigation into responsibility and liability.
The jurors at the inquest found the teen's employer negligent in training its employees in harassment prevention and resolution. The restaurant manager is now charged with involuntary manslaughter. They also found the school followed policies and procedures but was negligent in preventing bullying. Target 8 investigator Shanna Grove spoke with professionals to learn who can be held accountable for bullying that provokes death. She joins us live now at the Howard County Courthouse.
A little over a month ago, I was in this courthouse reporting on the coroner's inquest for 17-year-old Kenny Suttner, who took his own life in December. Since then, I wanted to find out who can be held responsible for bullying that leads to suicide and how people and institutions may be held accountable. So I spoke with attorney and school and employment attorneys to get their take on it and found inquests like this are not the norm.
Certainly, the risk of that happening to somebody else was a real possibility. Kenny Sutner lost his life in tragic and unnecessary manner.
In 24 years as coroner, Frank Flasspuller has held 5 inquests.
This was the first one to involve a suicide.
Did you know about this happening anywhere else in the nation where inquests are held for suicides because of bullying?
No, I have not heard of anywhere else.
Well, it's very unusual for a coroner to be involved in these cases.
That's not a typical case, and I've not ever seen a case like that.
Although unprecedented, he felt the inquest was necessary for public health.
If I just mark the death certificate a gunshot wound, but don't mark the death certificate why, then nobody looks at the underlying cause and we don't fix the problem. So, yeah, bullying was the cause of death, and that's a problem that we need to address.
People at the inquest testified, saying Kenny's manager at Dairy Queen targeted him, forcing him to do humiliating tasks like clean the floor while on his stomach and verbally harassing him. Others say it continued at school.
He had some pretty extreme bullying that was occurring at work, which ultimately led to the jury's decision that Harley Branham was the main actor in the involuntary manslaughter charge. And he was also experiencing bullying, it sounded like, for a long period of time at school.
The school district's attorney says although the loss of any student is a tragedy, policies and procedures can't stop all bullying.
There's nothing that the school district or any of its employees could have done differently that would have avoided this tragedy.
In a release, Glasgow School District states the reputations and character of district teachers, administrators have been harmed as a result of a proceeding in which they were not allowed to defend themselves. Unfortunately, the coroner has, in an apparent attempt to justify his actions, made statements about the district and its staff that he knows to be false.
There were no fabrications, there were no lies.
Just in general, are you referring to any specific statements at all, or just in general?
No, I'm not going to get in an argument with the school over this or that, because that diverts from what I want people to focus on, and that is bullying.
Both at school,
school districts have a legal responsibility to prevent bullying that involves illegal discrimination and harassment. I don't think that the school district has responsibility for absolutely everything a child says or does. That said, it has become somewhat of a trend to sue school districts.
And at work.
Depending on the circumstances and the fact involved, there is certainly the potential for liability to the employer directly through a tort type of claim under Missouri common law. And there's certainly also the potential for liability under the Workers' Compensation Act.
But it's a high bar to clear.
Probably in most cases, there's not going to be any liability or any compensation under either scenario.
Felony involuntary manslaughter due to harassment.
The coroner speaks for the deceased in order to protect the living. And I think that's really the underlying reason for this inquest was the inquest I wanted to speak for Kenny so that we can protect other people from the same thing happening.
According to 2016 data from the State Department of Mental Health, about a third of students reported being bullied in the last year, and about 5% reported attempting suicide. Reporting live in Fayette, Shanna Grove, KOMU 8 News.
Last night we had a story about how this case has divided the community and information about bullying cases around the state. To watch that story and look through our interactive web story, go to KOMU.com. You'll be able to see bullying reports at your child's school, watch extended interviews, and get more resources if you work at a school or own a business.